welcome to our Chamber's annual dinner and AGM. Before we get to the AGM, obviously we've got our annual lunch, and I'm delighted to welcome our guest speaker today, John Twigg from Manchester Airport. I've known John for many years, and you won't find anybody any more enthusiastic about the airport than John. There's always something exciting going on there, and we are really fortunate to have that facility on our doorstep.
What I want to just try and do in the time I've got is just sort of try and bring the airport to life in a way which perhaps it doesn't when you're passing through, going off on holiday or going away for business. And probably also talk about one or two of the current issues, because I always think with these things I probably need to be a little bit provocative just to stir some life into it. If you do nod off, oxygen masks will drop down from the ceiling and life jackets under the seat, you know all that stuff. Paul mentioned that we are now a bigger group, so I thought I'd just give you a sneak preview of some of our recent investments. Very youthful looking John Dunning there, I think, from the top off in his holidays. And aviation is actually a very young industry. It's only been going for 75 years. This year's our 75th birthday. And now it's very much a part of modern life. It used to be the preserve of the rich. You had to put your mink coat and your bowler hat and get dressed up to go to the airport. It's not quite like that now, at least not on a Friday night in the summer when I look out of the window. And as one of our old chief execs had a habit of putting it, at one time, flying was dangerous, sex was safe. That's now all changed. And I guess you will all be able to relate to flying not being the preserve of the rich anymore, but it's a commonplace, everyday thing that you do. My father flew in his 50s, I flew in my teens, my kids flew when they were sort of still in nappies. So I think probably all of you will have grown up with that change from sort of the charter holiday. You'll all think about your first charter holiday, I'm sure. And we've moved into now where it's really an essential part of commerce, an essential part of life, an essential part of travel. But it's opened up those horizons for all of us. So, who are we? We are, yes, our plug is we're now the biggest UK-owned airports group since we bought a modest little airport down in the south called Stansted in February. That doubled us as a business overnight, so we're about a £3 billion business now. Our first overseas venture was when we bought Humberside a few years ago into foreign parts in Yorkshire. We then picked up Bournemouth, since sold Humberside, bought East Midlands, and now have bought Stansted. So we're quite an interesting group. We're owned by the local authorities of Greater Manchester still, who are our shareholders, but also we have an Australian funds company that provided most of the money for us to buy Stansted. So we're quite an interesting business, and hopefully they'll try and show you airports themselves are quite interesting businesses and quite interesting places. That's all human life is there. One of the things I always say is it's really hard to make an airport presentation boring. You've got to try quite hard at it, but I'll go, simply because they do have all human life. Now, when I was at school, there were sort of 3 R's, but aviation is quite complicated, so actually I've got 4 R's, and I really wanted to use this as a way of bringing to life both some current issues and just some insights into our business and to our world. Any discussion about airports that's remotely contentious is all about runways. I've got my scars and t-shirt from the second runway, which was one of the things that gobbled up a good few years of my professional life. Hugely satisfying as a project, but still makes me an unwelcome visitor in parts of Mobley and Knutsford, I'm afraid. So runways, and currently at the moment with Heathrow, London, and Boris Island, and this, that, and the other is always a good topic good meaty topic, especially for the media. But go back to those humble beginnings of Manchester, when you used to hop over the fence when you'd park your bike by the fence and hopped on the plane. Manchester today is very much a different player. We are a serious player on the world stage. And we think of ourselves almost as a national airport, what happened to be in a UK region in the northwest. And so our competitors are not the other airports in the north or even in the UK particularly, although we compete on the margins with some of them. But we look to our competitions being Barcelona, Munich, Copenhagen. We're bigger than many European capital city airports. That's the market we're competing in. That's the world that our business operates in. And we're also unusual because we've got a real mix. We've still got 12, 15 seater passenger aircraft on scheduled services, and we've got 515 seaters with the A380. We've got charter, we've got long haul, we've got short haul, we've got domestic, we've got cargo. And that's been one of our strengths as an airport. We can turn our hand to many things, and if one market's struggling, generally there's another one that's doing quite well. So that gives us a very broad basis of business, which is useful. But also means you see a real diversity. I mean, we're plane spotter heaven. They just love us. That's a strange breed. If everyone gets talking to me about aircraft spotters, or I think lizards is the current term for them because it's sort of all like this. But what those folk know or don't know about aircraft is quite scary. I was at our viewing park a few weeks ago, and there were two of them having this conversation. One's got his telescope, because the serious ones use telescopes, not binoculars, I've discovered. And there's a sort of vapour trail, and he said, the 1127 from Munich's got Dunlop tyres on today, and not Goodyear's, The stuff they know is just quite scary. Really the little world that they live in. But our catchment, the way we draw passengers, pretty much northern Britain. We really act as the only big long-haul gateway airport outside London. So we pull passengers down from Scotland, Northern Ireland, the Isle of Man, as well as our sort of core catchments of Lancashire, Cheshire, Merseyside and West Yorkshire. So we're a relatively big beast in the sort of airports jungle now. One of the things we're really trying to do, and it's a constant refrain, is we have to try quite hard to get our voice heard. Everybody's heard of London, everyone's heard of Heathrow. But if you're an airline and you've got all these aircraft and you look at a map of the world, we're a little tiny blip. So we've always tried to punch above our weight, and the current debate about London is to say, look, hang on, we've got bags of capacity, we've got 2 runways, we've got modern facilities, we've got 3 terminals, we can grow quite comfortably from 20 odd million to 50 million. You don't need to go throwing millions and billions of pounds of investment at the South East just yet, because we do perform that national role. So that's one of our real big pushes to government, is to say, don't forget regional airports, not just us, the Birminghams, Newcastles, Bristols, all got a role to play. And happily, over the last sort of 12, 18 months, we've seen growth coming back. Hopefully you're all travelling a bit more, and that's a sign of people feeling a bit more comfortable. Yes, okay, I'll have the holiday abroad now, or I might do the winter holiday because I've given up just in favour of a summer holiday, because people tend not to give the summer holidays up, give most things up, but not that. So we've seen growth coming back, we've seen businesses investing, we've seen airlines making investment decisions. So happily we're now back on an upward trend, and this year is looking very good. We're growing 5-6%, which on a 20 million passenger airport is quite a good number of passengers. And in that, one of the things that airports tend to do is act as the catalysts economically. So we are quite a spur into the northwest economy, not just because of our own activity and spend, and we've got 300 companies on site and 90,000 jobs, but also to spill off into the supply chain and into the other businesses in the northwest that can grow, stay, expand, because they need air services, they need connectivity. Inbound tourism, inward investment, all need airports in some shape or form. It's never top of the list, but it's generally in the top 3 or 4 factors that drive investment decisions. So we think we've got a lot to offer. We think there's a big opportunity for the UK. So if you happen to bump into MPs, just remind them that there are airports outside London, which is where the Westminster bubble does tend to focus its attention quite often. So things we've seen recently, and it's always quite amusing, even with people in the industry, and they sort of say, well, you managed to, are you a proper grown-up airport? You've got rid of propellers and stuff, and then we say, well, we've got some flights a day to the Middle East. You've got Emirates flying 3 a day to Dubai. Oh, 2 of them happen to be A380, the biggest plane in the world, that doesn't generally fly to non-capital cities, and 2 a day to Dubai, 2 a day to Qatar. Oh, all right, this isn't just a little tin pot regional airport like we thought it was. This is the southern prejudice in me coming out, I'm afraid, sorry. So we've got a departure board that's got a lot of European capital cities on. We've got Washington back now, we've got Moscow, Berlin, Lisbon, and new Cairo. Cairo probably not one to push at the moment, is it? But we've got that good spread of business destinations, we've got a good crop of leisure destinations. So we're seeing growth really right across the board. I put the other 3 leisure ones on. I thought you need to know your audience for these things, I always say. So I thought this is the audience for these sorts of destinations, I'm sure. Should have put John's Las Vegas on really, shouldn't I, as well. But the only airports outside London that go to those Caribbean destinations. So we've got that spread of opportunity, and just getting through to people, look, you can now fly to somewhere you couldn't previously is quite a challenge for us. China's a big one, that's the big prize. We have a freight service to China. We're determined to get a passenger service, and I think in the next 2 or 3 years we probably will get a route to China. Maybe don't ask back in 2 or 3 years' time to see whether we've got it, but I think we will. I don't know if you've done business in China, but it's quite challenging, it's quite interesting, it's quite different, and it takes as long as it's going to take. If they think it's take 5 years, it will take 5 years. You can't short circuit it, but we're making an awful lot of progress with the airlines, with the airports, so that really will be a good prize, and one I'm sure valued by the business community as well as the leisure market. Just a word about freight. It's not on there. It does tend to be a little bit of the Cinderella, because you were saying earlier, you know, the parcel doesn't prop itself up in the pub at night and say, you know, I had a really wonderful experience flying, you know, on EasyJet out of Manchester. You know, the parcel tends not to say very much, and it goes on at night, a lot of it. But when your car breaks down, or you buy something off Amazon, or you know, you're trying to do a deal and get your contract documents there overnight, generally aviation will have played a part in that. East Midlands hosts Royal Mail's first class mail operation as the hub of the UK market. DHL there do a worldwide network of routes, and at Manchester most of our freight goes in the belly hold of passenger aircraft because that helps sustain our passenger routes. So get a few people at the front paying a lot of money, fill the back up, not so much money, fill the belly hold up, you've got a service that will make sense and make money. So we move most of our freight. And you walk around our cargo centre and it's brilliant, you know, you see racehorses and Bentleys, and then, you know, boxes of booze for the Middle East and stuff like that. So it's a real sort of eclectic mix, our cargo business, and it is one that's quite easy to forget, and yet one we all depend on. Try and offer the best passenger experience. I realise that's fatal because you're going to call me after and say, hang on, you mean you lost my bags, the customs officer was serving, you know, the cup of tea was cold. But we do try, and certainly a lot of the objective views about awards and that we do. We pick up Best UK Airport very, very regularly. So we think we're getting most things right most of the time. So things like the lounges we've developed, which don't rely on business class, but you just sort of buy those products. The way we've revamped security, brought it back, tried to get rid of most of the queues, tried to make it slicker, notwithstanding the EU and the UK government's chucking more rules at us than care to think of. And they do it on a Friday afternoon. They say, oh, for a Monday morning, will you just like search every passenger for liquids or take all the shoes off? All right, thanks very much. And also in retail. And some people criticise of us, you know, if you want to go shopping, I'll go to the Trafford Centre, you know, what do I have to go through all your shops? We get no public funds, we have to fund our own business, our own infrastructure, we get no subsidies or grants like other transport. So we have to make our own way in the world, and that's out of the profits that we make. And most of our profits come from commercial activities, so car parking, property, retail, because the airlines are so competitive trying to give you cheap fares that they don't want to pay us very much money. So in a sense we cross-subsidise those two parts of the business, so that's why airports look like shopping centres sometimes. But again, we try and give people the range and the quality and all of the things that they want. And there's probably one other thing, just to talk about passenger facilities, is that we're quite an odd business because people come to us because they want to be somewhere else. So our objective is to get rid of our passengers, which sounds a bit strange really, but you're only coming to us as a necessary part of getting somewhere else. So what you want from us is seamless, quick, in and out. And we'd like you to pause a little bit and give us some money. But really your head is, how do I get out of this place? You know, how do I get to where I really, really want to be? And that's quite unusual for a business. In terms of my second hour, most of you recognise this because you're thinking, yeah, this is what I'm going back to when I get into the office this afternoon. And we, just like lots of other businesses, suffer immensely from red tape and the burdens of regulation. The aviation industry is an internationally regulated business which causes its own complications. The one I just wanted to dwell on, because I guess some of these others, certainly the last two, you'll probably all recognise and say, yeah, we're really bad at that in this country. Passenger duty, if you look closely at your tickets and your invoices, you will see that is going up and up and up. It started as a £5 in the mid-1980s, and the top band is now £184. So, you know, do the arithmetic even for a family of four. And it's unusual because the UK is about the only country in Europe that's still hanging on to APD. And it's hugely damaging not only to your pocket but also to the business, because it's putting airlines off investing in new routes. We were on the verge of having a service to Kuala Lumpur, and it was between us and Paris. And at the end of the day, the airline was so worried about the impact of the tax it was paying, they went to Paris. So we're not going to service Kuala Lumpur. You know, it's that brutal in that marketplace. And the Chancellor tells us, you know, I need to find £3.5 billion, which is what he collects in it. If you can find some other source of that money, you know, tell me. What he doesn't accept or doesn't do anything about is the fact that the cost of the UK of not having growth in aviation is far more damaging than that. But just to give you an example, the airlines pay us about £130 million a year for landing fees, parking, aircraft handling passengers. There is then £260 million, or twice as much, paid to the Exchequer in air passenger duty. That's the scale of the tax that we've got this sort of monkey on our back. So our tax rate as a business is about 52–53%, without APD to be about 32–33%, so about on par with most businesses. So APD, we really get on our soapbox about it, I'm afraid, so sorry for that little political bit, but it really is damaging, and it's certainly hitting you in the pocket and also denying you opportunities for new routes. Which brings us on to the other one, is that there are still quaint bilateral restrictions from just after the Second World War, where countries carved up who could fly to where, and usually it was to protect their state airline. So the reason we don't have routes to a number of countries is because we're caught up in a sort of political power game about whether one country wants to give another country certain rights to fly over it. We had Hong Kong on sale, and then the Russians decided it was quite a useful stick to hit the UK government over the head about something else. So we lost it because Cathay lost their rights to fly. But the fact that we should have to negotiate with countries to get routes again seems to us to be a nonsense. And the last two are very topical. All I would say is if you have got red tape stuff that gets in the way, then you will find government is receptive as long as you do two things. One is give them the evidence and not just go and have a moan and say, oh, this red tape's terrible, do something about it. We'll go to them with real specific, because we've been doing that for a while now, and we've certainly seen ministers quite receptive to very specific examples of things getting in the way of our business and holding us back from investing or growing. So I would encourage, if you have got those, is to go and start knocking on some doors in Westminster. So my third R, so I thought I'd start with the new high-speed train on the top left there, so because that's coming to us all not very soon. But transport is one of those vital bits of glue that helps trade. Trade competitiveness relies on it, particularly now where we're operating internationally as well as nationally. And history shows that trade and transport links are really right at the core of business and commerce. And so we're no exception. You know, access to us by road, by rail is a really fundamentally important part of our business. And that's why we're keen to see things like HS2 and other investment. So if you can't get to the check-in desk, then you can't fly, or you can't get to it, but you can't work. And it's no good turning up saying, you know, you could have worked sometimes. Traffic was terrible this morning, sorry I'm a bit late. You know, we all sympathise with that, we've all been there. Try to the check-in desk, and you won't get a lot of sympathy because, well, sorry, well, you know, the plane has gone, and that's not quite what you want. So, I mean, Manchester's history has been very much founded on its accessibility. Next to the motorway network, got our own dedicated railway station, we're getting Metrolink and the tram, we've got a bus network, a coach network, so we really are joined up with everything other than boat, although I think Swampy and his mates tried to paddle up the River Bollin one day, so we probably say we have had some passengers coming by boat. And that network and plugging air into it is really a crucially important part of why we can serve the areas that we can. So within 2 hours travel time, we've got about 20 million people, and forget how many businesses. But again, the thing I like about my job is you keep coming across all these sort of quirky things. And we were talking about the rail network, and we have 24-hour trains, and we have particularly strong service on Transparent Express. And we talked to a guy from Huddersfield, and he was waxing lyrical about the trains and the stations. Oh, it's really quite good, you know, quite like getting that sort of feedback. And I said, you know, do you fly a lot? He says, oh, I've never been on a plane in my life. He says, but I live in Huddersfield, and I go drinking in Leeds, and no matter what time or what state I'm in, there's always a train from Leeds to Huddersfield who's going to the airport. So, oh right, okay, so our reach does extend a little bit further. Issues that we face, and we said it's crucial to our success, but questions about how do we use the M6, the A556. We're not a big chunk of the traffic on there, but it's really important. Certainly if you're trying to make the journey to the airport, reliability is crucial to us. So we're quite hard for the highways agency to deal with because we're not big in volume, but we're very strong on the quality bit. You know, reliability is our big thing. And I guess the same is true of the rail network, is that we need passengers to be able to get to us quickly, reliably, conveniently, with a decent product, unlike some of the trains that serve us, I'm sad to say. You know, those two, have you ever been those two welded transit bands that are being put together and sort of put on a rail? It sometimes feels like that sometimes with some of our services. Our services to crew are poor. We have 1 an hour, except for that really useful time at 7:45 in the morning for the train that I would normally catch to get me to the airport. There's a gap. And that's really because we've had those services squeezed out by the Pendolinos on Virgin. So one of the things that HS2 does for us, takes London traffic off West Coast Main Line and off the local regional network and gives us a chance to get much better stopping services down to Crewe, West Midlands, East Midlands, Potteries into Wales. That's a huge market for us, which at the moment we have one very poor service to Crewe. So that's very high on our agenda. So again, if you ever get involved in discussions with network rail train operators, just remind them that services from the south are poor. From the north, they're pretty good. We have 9 trains an hour, and you know, we cover most of our catchment. But to the south, we can do a lot better. And HS2 just seems us the most natural thing in the world to provide the capacity that business and leisure needs. Move the West Coast mainline stuff onto something that is going to be built as a new railway, so why not build it straight and quick? It's not about speed for me, it's about capacity. And you know what Euston's like on a Friday night, you know what those trains are like. That the notion in 20 years' time, that'll still be okay with the extra carriage. I don't buy that, I'm afraid. So we'd be very strong lobbying, and obviously you probably know there's a station suggested at the airport to really serve that South Manchester, North Cheshire market. It's not just for air passengers, it really will act as a service for that big catchment. And obviously there's debate about the Crewe one, but for us is get the damn thing built and get it built past Birmingham and get on with it much more quickly. Shamefully, I think Morocco are building 400 mile high-speed rail in the next 5 years. Well, we'll be lucky if we've got some bit of paper signed off in Parliament for one line. Very happy times. I thought it was worth, just in the context of recovery and growth, just to mention Airport City to you, which you may have come across. And this was a concept born out of capturing the economic value that the airport brings in terms of economic growth, and so we ought to try and capitalise on that. So we spent a few years looking at airport cities across the world, and then as our typical northern great way is, okay, that's how everybody else does it, we'll do it like this. And I always think that sort of northern bloody mindedness, almost icon, is great, because that's why the Northwest is such a fantastic place, because it does things, you know, gets on with it and says, yeah, okay, we've seen everybody else do it, we'll do it bigger and better. And what airport cities always found is they needed land areas, they needed certain key parts, and we said, well, what's the offer that works for Manchester? Because we've got Media City, we've got Sports City, we've got the Regional Centre. What's the bit that adds to those and makes them bigger than the sum of the parts? And we thought something founded on connections and accessibility was actually, that was the niche to go for. So it's a concept built on connections by air, by rail, by road, by bus, by tram, by coach. So it's very much aimed at businesses who are into moving things, people, goods, even ideas. So it's quite a unique proposition, certainly unique in the UK, and we've not seen any others worldwide which have based themselves around transport. There are quite a few airports, but they tend not to have that drive behind them. And then it capitalises on Manchester's key strengths, on its academic expertise, its scientific expertise, its growth sectors of the economy, and also fits into a wider picture of regenerating parts of Manchester, particularly within Shore. So we sort of hatched this concept, which timing-wise was very helpful, because when the Chancellor was looking around for stimulus to growth and created enterprise zones, we said, well, you know, we've got one here, pretty well up and ready. So we start work on site in the autumn. It's big, it's about 4 million square foot of mixed employment, but very much aimed at businesses, not just offices, but also logistics, R&D, cargo handling companies that actually want connectivity. They'll be moving people in the core business. And the thing that made sense to us was, well, we've got successful businesses wanting access to air services here, that's good for that core business, and if the core business is bringing people in, that's going to be good for them. So, well, that seems to be quite a neat formula. £650 million, it's big, spread over about 10 years, and we reckon on top of the airport jobs, which will grow by another 15 to 18,000, we'll probably get another 12 to 15,000 jobs in those industries grouped around us. It's meant to be good quality. That's what passengers expect of our facilities, that's what global businesses want, and we're very much talking about an international European market. Probably a good example, it actually demonstrates one or two things, is Etihad, the national carrier for Abu Dhabi, who also sponsored my beloved Blues, which is another happy bonus. They put a service into Manchester to Abu Dhabi, so that was a long haul route we'd got, just like any other airport. Then we got some maintenance activity off them. Then we got some back office. They started to invest in East Manchester. They've now brought their European call centre. So all of a sudden that airline, who could have been a bit footloose and say, oh, we'll go somewhere else, now have really put roots down in the northwest. They're employing a lot of local people. They're part and parcel of local life. And Airport City has given them the capability to get facilities. So their European-wide network of call centres and back office now rooted in Manchester. So that's a really nice example of what we're trying to achieve with Airport City. We won't be just airlines, it will be very much blue chip global companies that we can attract in there. Those of you who know the geography, round about with the airport at the bottom, we've got the M56 running up the middle, then the M60. So this really is around the southern edge of Wythenshawe, where you've got the hospital, which is now an international centre of excellence. You've got various employment sites, business parks. So this sort of necklace of opportunity is what's at the heart of the enterprise zone, and we're trying to join it up using transport links and Metrolink to actually make those places good, viable, long-term economic prospects, which, because there's 65 to 70,000 people living in the middle with huge areas of deprivation and challenge, we're trying to get a really nice bit about local employment and local labour. So north, again, just to give you a sort of little geography lesson, you're looking south across the airport. So as you come off the 56, down to the Hilton, got the station, Terminal 2, Terminal 1, Terminal 3. So as you come in approaching the airport, the site on your left is the sort of scrubland and car park. That becomes transformed into a big business district, which is the shot underneath. And again, if you just pick out the station, it's in there, with a new bridge across the motorway. Any been to New York, I've seen the High Line Bridge, the one that goes across about a zillion lanes of motorway. It's very much modelled on that, with sort of landscaping and a really nice, attractive environment. That will come across the motorway, and that will put any part of this area within 6 to 7 minutes walk of the station. So it's very much reliant on all those means of transport getting in there. You see there the scale of opportunity and the nature of what that is. So, coming back to cargo, so just sort of swivel you around, just looking slightly in the direction of the M56 coming into Junction 6. So our existing cargo centre, there are textile crimping tin sheds, and then the airport in the background. So the area of landing here, which is on your right as you go from the M56 down the tunnels under the runway. So it's the area to the right where we've just spent a few months on moving the bugs and the bunnies and the little green slimy things that have been also part of my life. So that is now ready to go on site. We start work in the autumn, and we've just signed up, we've certainly signed one, we're about to sign a second unit up for big logistics companies. And again, it's to give them growth at Manchester, give them the opportunity to expand, give them the ability to have a future for their businesses. So I hope that's brought the place to life a little bit. I hope you found something there of interest.